Welcome everyone to Couch Potato Diary. Happy Tuesday. My name is Peter Klein. Thank you very much for tuning in. Today's show all about football as we get ready for the start of the NFL season and in the stretch run of the fantasy football prep season. So that is going to be the focus of this show today. It's all about the National Football League fantasy and otherwise. Let's get right into it, looking at the players who I think are going to decide fantasy football championships this season. All right, we are going to start here with the players who I think could decide the fantasy season this year. So this isn't just necessarily, oh, this guy's going to win everyone championships. It is more, if this guy hits, it has the potential to win championships. If this guy doesn't hit, it has the potential to be maybe a little bit devastating in a few different ways. Hopefully you kind of pick up on the theme as we go along, because I don't know if I'm describing it all that well. But we start at number 5, and that is Anthony Richardson. He came up really early in mock drafts, and we have another mock draft coming up today. But he has been coming up very early in mock drafts, like too early in mock drafts, and that has been a real difficult thing because he only played in a couple of games. Looked all right. Like, there is absolutely the promise in him, but he only played a couple of games, got hurt, and was done for the season. And again, this is why I think he has the potential to decide fantasy season, because he's going as like a top, like he is going as a very firmly placed starting quarterback. And that is a high level. He's going ahead of Burrow. He's going ahead of Kyler Murray. He is going ahead of Jordan Love and Dak Prescott and all of those guys. And we've seen barely any games from this guy. And so I just, like, on the one hand, if everyone's right and he is that dude, then this is a guy who could potentially be a league winner. But if he is not, and I get, like, quarterback, there's a bunch of good ones out there that you can go out and try to play the streaming game, so maybe it's not as impactful, but you are using a fairly high pick on this guy, and it is, I think, very concerning a little bit to be putting that much stock into a quarterback. Like, look at it this way. You have him going, if I'm remembering mock drafts right, like 4th, 5th round-ish, somewhere around there. Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams are going like 9th, 10th round. Anthony Richardson's played like 120 more minutes in the NFL than those guys have. So I think people are treating this as if it is a sure thing. And I think it is the furthest thing from a sure thing. And to be passing up on some of the running backs and wide receivers and tight ends going around him, if it works, it's going to be great. If not, that could be a bit of a concern. At 4, it's Kirk Cousins. Not necessarily for him. Although if he gets back to that level, that is going to be a streaming quarterback that people are able to kind of ride for a while. And he's going at the back end of drafts, or in some not even at all. And so that way you have been able to firmly solidify your roster, and then for basically free, go out and get a high caliber starter if he is that dude. But the main thing for him is he, at the palm of his hands, has the fantasy value of Justin Jefferson, the best receiver in football, Aaron Jones, who still I think has some life in those legs, Jordan Addison, a young receiver, bit of a rough offseason, but a young receiver who has a ton of talent. Sorry, I'm thinking, these were the guys who he had all that in not Aaron Jones, sorry, I'm getting him mixed up, but he had all of these guys last year. I'm still making a point. I just got confused on which one I'm making. He had Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson. He didn't have Aaron Jones. That was the Minnesota now. But with Alexander Madison and TJ Hawkinson. And all of those guys, Addison, maybe not so much, but like Jefferson wasn't the guy who you thought he would be, and on down the line. And so now this year, he has the fantasy in his hands of Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson. All 3 going in the top 6, 7 rounds of draft. Bijan in the first, Drake London in the second. So if Kirk Cousins is just bad, then all of a sudden, or just hasn't recovered from these injuries or whatever, he has the potential to ruin a first round pick, ruin a second round pick, and ruin a top 5 tight end, all in just one fell swoop. So that is a little bit of a concern. But that being said, if he's just back, if he is the guy, then as I said before, this is a dude that you can go out and pick up and basically get for free, either in waiver wire or at the end of your drafts, and just roll with him. And if he's awesome, then Bijan might be like knocking on the door as the best player in fantasy. And Drake London at the second round could end up being a steal, given how many receivers are going ahead of him. And Kyle Pitts, again, could be a steal, given that there's, I think, 4 or 5 tight ends going ahead of him right now. So Kirk Cousins, maybe not just for him, but for how he can swing the value of these players is going to be, I think, very important to fantasy football this season. Screwed it up a little bit, but we got to the initial, the eventual point there anyway. At 3, it's Joe Burrow. Again, so many players on this offense being drafted as normal. Jamar Chase, and we've done it, and on all these mock drafts, we've ended up with Jamar Chase a lot. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, those guys are being drafted as normal. Joe Burrow continues to have some wrist problems, and they tried to limit how much he's practicing as we ramp up here toward week 1. And so as we talked about with Cousins, the value of some of these other players, but also for him, he is going as QB6 right now in a lot of the mock drafts we have done. And again, 4th, 5th, 6th round, some good players in the 4th, 5th, 6th round that you're just passing on to get Joe Burrow. If the injury situation with him isn't right, again, it is him, it is Chase, and it is T. Higgins, who are all going in the top 6 rounds of drafts right now, that could just completely tank. So again, Joe Burrow has a lot of this in his hands. We're not going to do this for everyone, because you could do that for a bunch of quarterbacks, right? But at 2, it's Jameson Williams. There is a chance, and this is more kind of a boom potential, because if and maybe I should have had Jameson Williams a little bit further down on this list, because if he doesn't hit, he's going in the 10th round. It's not going to be remarkably debilitating. But I truly believe he has the potential to be this year's Puka Nacua, where he is going either late in drafts, depending on the format. Maybe you're getting him as a waiver wire guy. Probably not. He's going early enough. But still, so it's not straight line to the Puka comparison from a year ago, but he is still going in the middle to back part of a lot of these drafts. And I truly think he is a player who has the potential to really steal seasons this year. I think he has amazing game-breaking ability, and that is why I think that he can absolutely decide a lot of fantasy seasons this year. If he just turns into a number 1 wide receiver from the 10th, 11th, 12th round, then you have an unbelievable steal and have just been able to create this dynamic offensive weapon out of nowhere. At number 1, it's Christian McCaffrey. And this one seems maybe a little bit like a cop-out, saying like, oh yeah, the guy who goes first overall has a chance to decide a lot of fantasy leagues. Last year, he was so good, he was winning fantasy championships on his own. And so that is kind of the argument for taking him with the first overall pick, is that like he has the potential to just do that. That being said, he is already dealing with some injuries in camp, and basically the entire San Francisco offense is either holding out or banged up a little bit. And I have real concerns that this player is going to be able to replicate the health he had last year and the production that he had from a season ago. And if he just isn't that clear-cut number 1 guy, then all of a sudden you have to wait a very long time to get your 2nd and then 3rd pick. And you then, I think a lot of times strategically are going, well, look, a lot of really good receivers that come off the board, I kind of need to get one of them. So you are kind of off, you now have invested in the running back position, but you don't want to go, okay, well, I'm just going to double up and get a 2nd running back because I have CMC. But also, now that it has come back around and say in a 12-team league, you now have the 24th overall pick, there's odds are like 10, 11, 12 wide receivers have come off of the board. So you're not even getting one of those. And so it can just be crushing to you. But again, this is a player who has shown he has the capability of just winning fantasy championships. And so it is a really, really risky play. And look, all of them, like a bunch of 1st round picks last year didn't pan out. But Christian McCaffrey, I feel like this year is a real swing type of a player. There. So those are the players who I think will decide fantasy football championships positively or negatively this season. Let's move now to the National Football League regular season preview. Every year there are we very rarely go, okay, well, 14 teams made the playoffs last year. Those same 14 get in this year. And so today I'm going to look at the teams that I think who were in the playoffs last year who won't be, and the teams that weren't last year who will be. We will start with teams who were in, who I now think are out. At number 3, it's the LA Rams. I've talked about how I'm a little bit like the things that I'm worried about being wrong about. They're one. They're absolutely one. Because I am fully out on the LA Rams right now. I think the quarterback is a year older and kind of winding down. Same thing with Cooper Kupp. I think losing Aaron Donald on the defensive line is a real problem for this team that was already kind of just barely keeping it between the white lines on the defensive side of things anyway. And so now you lose Aaron Donald. That doesn't help anything. And I think it causes some really, really big problems. And then you are relying on 2 young kids who had probably the best season of their careers, relying on them to do that again. And that would concern me greatly. And I'm not just saying the best season of their careers up to this point. Obviously, last year was the best and worst season Puka Nacua has ever had in the NFL because it's the only one he's had in the NFL. I'm saying, I don't know if he replicates that at any point in his career. And that's not a shot at him. That was just a really, really good year. And so I feel like there is the potential that this thing kind of nosedives a little bit out there. At 2, Cleveland. They had the best defense in the NFL. They ran through 4 quarterbacks and somehow still made it into the postseason with that. And the defense is still probably going to be really, really good. But if it takes a step back from being elite to bordering on all-time great, I don't think the offense is good enough to make up for it. With no Nick Chubb, although that was an issue last year, with Deshaun Watson, who kind of looks like he just sucks now. I don't see a path where this team is going to be that good again this year. So they are out for me. And at number 1, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. I love the offseason that they had right up until we get to the quarterback. And honestly, I like half of the quarterback moves that they made. I think Justin Fields fits there great. I think Russell Wilson is kind of cooked. And it just feels like something where they're going to hold on to this one maybe a little bit too long. And I don't think they're going to be able to get this team to where they need to get to. Also, we are assuming a great deal of health with Cincinnati, of course. But I don't think Pittsburgh is going to be able to step back into that playoff role this year and really make that push again. So those are the teams that I have out. So who do I have moving in? Now, these lists are unbalanced, and they shouldn't be because, I'm saying 3 come out, so 3 should go in, but I'm saying 4 should go in. Kind of to hedge my bets, but whatever, it's my show. Fuck off. Out of the playoffs last year, in this year, at 4, and the reason they're at 4 is I'm not firmly 100%, yeah, let's go. I got Arizona. I think, I just talked about how I don't think the Rams are going to be all that good. I've talked about how I think San Francisco maybe falls off a little bit. And Seattle, I do think they are going to be better this year. I think a lot of aspects of their team are going to be improved. But I feel like Arizona, going from having one of the worst defenses in the NFL history last year, they at least have competent players on the defensive side of things. A full season of Kyler Murray coming back with Marvin Harrison, with another year of McBride. You have Benson and Connor that you trust in the backfield. DeMarcado can kind of change things up a bit as well. This feels like a relatively competent football team in a division that I think might open up for them a little bit. And so I think Arizona has a chance to get into the playoffs this year. At 3, it's Atlanta. We made actually quite a bit of money last year on betting against the Atlanta Falcons. And frustratingly not enough because they still won a few games. But they where everyone's pick just, everyone else in this division sucks. And we had that Tampa Bay ticket, and that will go down as one of the best plays we've had here on Couch Potato Diary in our existence so far. But I do think now Atlanta, whether it's Penix or Cousins, they have competent quarterback play. They have made some really good moves to shore up this defense in training camp. Getting Judon, I think, is going to have a real impact on things. Simmons as well, I think, is going to really help out this defense. I think the Falcons are actually a good football team this year, and so I do think they get in. At 2, this has been a trendy pick for people to go against. I have Jacksonville. They were the top team in this division. And then Trevor Lawrence got hurt, and he tried to play through it, and so I think that is skewing people's perception of him a little bit. But you still have one of the better running backs in the league in ETN. I wish they would have done a little bit more to shore up this receiver room, but if Brian Thomas turns into a guy, then I think all of a sudden everyone starts to stack up a little bit better than you would think. I think Ingram is fine as a tight end. Defensively, Josh Allen, who added another name onto it. I forget what it is. I apologize. I'm sorry. Kind of anchors this defense. It's really good. Now, I do think Doug Peterson can be a touch overrated at times. And it has seemed like the longer he's in a place, the worse it gets. And so that there's a bit of a concern there. But I think a lot of people are just saying, oh, yeah, Jacksonville, whatever, the Houston Texans division to do whatever win. And I think actually every team in this division is maybe a little bit more dangerous than people think. But I think Jacksonville is right at the tippy top of that list. I think they are actually going to be a decent football team this year. And at number 1, it's Cincinnati. For some of the reasons I mentioned before, if you're watching the full episode, with Joe Burrow being coming back, if he is actually healthy, then this team is a no doubt playoff team. They still need some help on the offensive line. I think Burrow being there is going to help this defense out substantially. And you just have an elite level quarterback, one of those guys, it's so cliche, but just knows how to win and get the most out of guys like Higgins and Chase and all of them. And so that's why it feels like a bit of a gimme to say that they should make the playoffs. But assuming health, which you never can in football, but assuming health, this team is 100% a playoff team next year. So those are the picks that I have for in and out for the NFL this season. All right, now we skipped it yesterday, and I thought we'd do 2 today, but up against it here, so we're only going to do 1. So today is mock draft number 9 as we get ready for the start of the fantasy football season. All right, it is time for another mock draft. Today, we draft from the number 9 slot in a 12-team league. We have been going through spots 1 through 8, and admittedly, Team 8 might be my favorite so far. I think we did really well from that spot, and so I think that there is an opportunity to maybe build off of that here with Team 9. So, as always, 12-team, half-point PPR. Let's get into it. We will hit OK. This is on sleeper.com. Amazing mock draft app. So it starts out McCaffrey, Hill, Lamb, Bijan Robinson going 4, Jefferson at 5, Chase at 6, Brown at 7, Amon-Ra St. Brown at 8, and so it gets to us at 9. And this was the same situation. Basically, we were in at Team 8, and so this one, like, Gibbs is interesting. Taylor, Saquon, Garrett Wilson, all quite interesting. This is an automatic click. The fact that I'm already taking 20 seconds to make this, I'm sure Sleeper has alarm bells going off like, hey, this person might not be real or might be drunk doing this, because it's Breece Hall. It is 100% Breece Hall. After that, a couple more running backs go. Taylor, Gibbs, Barkley, then it's Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Puka Nacua. So it comes back around to us. If you're watching, I hope you can make that out. We have Travis Etienne, Kyron Williams, and Derrick Henry as the running backs available. At wide receiver, it is Drake London, Devontae Adams, and Chris Olave, with Josh Allen, who has been going around these parts as well. I have just kind of laid out, if you're watching the full episode, my concern about Kyron Williams, and I've kind of laid that out throughout this whole thing. I have never been huge on ETN, but last year he really showed me that he can, I think, be a legitimate number 1 back. And again, if you're watching the full episode, I just big upped Jacksonville as a team that should make the playoffs this year. So I will go Travis Etienne. Start out with my running backs being Hall and Etienne, and now gonna have to piece together a wide receiver room. Not a huge run on him. Now we might start to see it, but after us, it went Derrick Henry, Chris Olave, Kyron Williams, Travis Kelce, Devontae Adams. Josh Allen goes in the top of the back part of the second round. Drake London as well. Then it's Devon Achane, Brandon Ayuk, and a couple running backs in Jacobs and Pacheco. Another tight end in Laporta. Evans, Deebo Samuel coming off is kind of the one I was hoping would swing back around to us. It doesn't work out that way. So that is a little disappointing that it didn't quite work out. And now we are here with this spot. And I will be honest, as I look down here, James Cook still being available has me reconsidering whether the ETN pick was the one to do. Like maybe because there are a few running backs in this neighborhood that I don't mind ending up with Cook, Mixon, and Alvin Kamara. Maybe I should have gone with an Olave or an Adams in this spot and then have it come back around to these guys. So now we are looking at wide receiver. Nico Collins, I believe we ended up with him the other day. Stephon Diggs, I'm just all the way out on. That's a no for me. Jalen Waddle as well, I think is interesting. You have DJ Moore, Cooper Kupp a little bit further down. Lamar Jackson interests me, actually a fair amount, but I still feel like, again, this is just, it's too early to go quarterback. We went quarterback early with Josh Allen, and I really didn't like how that team turned out. And I think if we wait on wide receiver until our next pick, and I get we do have a wraparound, so maybe it gets a little bit easier to do that, but also maybe we just get a better, or not a better quarterback, but another quarterback in there, and see how that works. So it's an interesting strategic decision. We only have 30 seconds left here. I feel like Nico Collins is going to be very good. And so we're going to go Nico Collins in that area. Immediately after it goes Diggs, Rachaad White, Jalen Waddle. Oh, now this is interesting because then it goes DJ Moore, James Cook, Cooper Kupp, and it comes back around to us. And Lamar Jackson is still there at this quarterback spot. Again, after him, as kind of our safety blankets, it's Stroud, Richardson, who in the full episode I have laid out why I don't want him. But then in the round after, it's Burrow. And in the round after him, it's Kyler and Dak. And the round after that, Jordan Love. All quarterbacks who I'm comfortable with getting. And so, like, Lamar here is really, really interesting. But I think the opportunity cost of not getting a DK Metcalf or a Malik Neighbors or a Michael Pittman is just too much. If we had gone receiver early, there's also Mixon, who I'm comfortable with as our running back two, Walker, who I'm comfortable with as our running back two in this neighborhood. But DK Metcalf, I think, is the move here. So now we have I'll make the pick. DK Metcalf goes. So now we have a running back room with Hall and ETN that I'm very comfortable with. We have a receiving room of Collins and Metcalf that I'm very comfortable with. And we're still comfortable with a number of the tight ends that are on the board. And we're still comfortable with a couple of the quarterbacks that are on the board here as well. And so while it has been tempting early on to go with one of the big names at quarterback and even a little bit of tight end, I still think that the right move was made in waiting here. And now we do run into a situation that we haven't really a whole lot yet. There was a tight end run that I was not expecting. So since our last pick, Kincaid, McBride, Kittle, Andrews, and Pitts have all come off the board. We have been getting tight ends a little bit early in this draft to avoid this situation. Ingram and Bowers fascinate me. Ingram had a ton of volume last year. Bowers, I think, could do that out with the Raiders. I don't know if I want to bank on that as my number one guys, though, but I don't feel like we're in a spot to reach on the tight end here just yet. I think we can wait at least a couple of rounds for that now. And so this is now an area we haven't really drafted running back or wide receiver here in this neighborhood a whole lot as of right now. And so in this spot, I am going to go probably T. Higgins. So the receivers on the board, for those listening, Amari Cooper, T. Higgins, and George Pickens are there. At running back, it's Aaron Jones and James Conner, David Montgomery, and DeAndre Swift also here in this spot. Jones, I think there's still a lot of talent there. I just worry, like, how much are we banking on Sam Darnold actually getting the job done? But with Higgins, I think he's incredibly talented. I do worry about the holdout this year, but he is coming in basically as our flex player now with Collins and Metcalf ahead of him. So I love getting Higgins here in the fifth as kind of like we have a safety blanket again to just not have to worry about it. At this point now, I do feel like we have to go quarterback. I don't mind if we fall to Prescott or Love, but I would rather not. There's just there aren't a whole lot of players here where I am looking at that I would be disappointed if we didn't get instead of going for a Kyler Murray. So we will go with Kyler. Well, you know what? Because we've gone Kyler quite a bit. And so I kind of want to play a few different strategies out here, obviously. Najee Harris is going to get a lot of carries early on this season with Pittsburgh. And so that might be not a bad flex balance. While Higgins works his way back in, Najee Harris gets the boatload of the carries in Pittsburgh with Jaylen Warren out. And so Najee is interesting here. I'm also looking at Raheem Mostert because we do have a while before it loops back around to us with the 9th pick of the 7th round. And I really liked getting Mostert. I think he is kind of the number 1 back with the Miami Dolphins. And even if HN has a big year, I still think Mostert is going to be a effective running back in this offense. And so the hesitation I have, just to talk this all out with you, the hesitation that I have is we go quarterback, let's say in the back part of the last round with Love, we miss out on Bowers, and now we're into a tight end landscape that I don't really love. And so looking at some of the running backs down the list, Javonte Williams is down there. But then after that, it does kind of fall off a little bit, and then we're getting into the receivers that we like. So it's a difficult decision for us to pull the trigger on, but I am going to go Raheem Mostert here, and let's see how this different strategy plays out. So after that, Pickens and Odunze go, Montgomery, Pollard, Xavier Worthy as well, Christian Kirk. Kyler Murray does come off the board. We kind of expected that. Keenan Allen, Najee Harris, then Jalen Reed and Calvin Ridley, Zamir White, Rashee Rice, Nick Chubb, and Godwin. So it comes back around to us. There are a couple of quarterbacks and a couple of tight ends available. Looking, the team right after us, the 2 teams right after us, also don't have a quarterback and also don't have tight ends. They both pick twice coming back around to us. So now we have to try to see, because I could see both of those teams also going quarterback and tight end. There's more passable tight ends available, I think, in this neighborhood than there are quarterbacks. And so I am going to go with Jordan Love. I think this offense is going to grow a little bit. Immediately after us, Prescott goes, then Ingram, Njoku, Moss, Purdy, Addison. And so it comes back around, and we gambled and we won. I was hoping Bowers would still be there. I didn't think he would be. But Team 12 going David Njoku helps us out immensely. They go Njoku and Moss. Purdy goes as well, along with Jordan Addison. And so here we are, able to pick Brock Bowers. And so we still get a quarterback tight end combination that we'll feel comfortable with, which is always something I try to do coming out of these drafts. And so again now, by waiting on these just a little bit longer, I do think we have kind of bumped down a tier from what we normally get in these spots. Like a lot of times at quarterback, we have been getting we have been getting Kyler, let's say, and Kittle as quarterback and tight end. But one of the things that has happened is that as other drafts have happened and as everyone kind of adjusts now, we have seen that some of the guys who we want are going a little bit earlier. So we have to adjust. So we have, I think, taken a bit of a dip in the tier from with our quarterback and with our tight end, but there's still quarterbacks and tight ends that we're comfortable with. And now I feel very comfortable with Mostert as my running back 3. I feel very comfortable with Higgins as my wide receiver 3 and one of them in the flex. And so now we are into this spot where we want to get a couple of the high end wide receivers, or the couple of the breakout wide receivers, I should say, and guys who I'm feeling good about. And one of them is Jackson Smith-Njigba. The other is Jameson Williams. I do like Williams, I think, more than Smith-Njigba, but I am going to play the ADP game on this and hope that Williams is still there for me when it swings back around. So we're going to go JSN in this spot. Edwards goes after us, then it's Jared Goff, Brian Thomas. Another one who I was thinking about, Ezekiel Elliott, Ty J. Spears, Trey Benson for Arizona, and it comes back to us, and wouldn't you know it, our boy Jameson Williams is right there. And so again, this is the middle part where we want to come away with 2 of Watson, Smith-Njigba, and Williams. We have done just that. Probably going to miss out on one of the running backs we want in Chase Brown. He does go with the 8th pick in the 10th round. And so as it comes back to us, this is the reason why, and I'll explain in a sec, why I like to do this kind of strategy with these guys, is because one of the things I have noticed is that I do think there are some running backs in the back part, like a few 1Bs, so to speak, who are going here in the 11th and 12th round. We miss out on a few, admittedly, in Chase Brown, Zach Charbonnet, and J.K. Dobbins, but we still get an opportunity to take one of them. Chuba Hubbard, for the first 4 or 5 weeks, is going to be the guy in Carolina. And so to have him come in as our running back 4, I like being able to get a guy who I think is going to be a pretty good case for volume anyway in out in Carolina, and be able to help us out that way. Another one here that's tempting is Rico Dowdle, running back for Dallas. We haven't really taken him a whole lot in drafts so far. He is someone who intrigues me quite a bit, because standing in his way is only Ezekiel Elliott, and that's not overly concerning to me. But there's another one down here, Jalen Wright. I get that he right now is the number 3 with the Miami Dolphins, but he is an injury away, and he is in a better offense. So it's a little bit tempting, and it does kind of handcuff one of the plays we had earlier. If Mostert isn't effective, I don't think it's just going to be Achane. I think it's going to be Achane and Jalen Wright. And so here in this spot in the 12th round, I'm actually going to go Jalen Wright to round out our running back depth. And so admittedly, when we've taken those 3 receivers before, whether it be Watson, Smith, and Jigba and Williams, in some of the other spots, our wide receiver depth has looked a little bit better than it does right now. Hubbard and Wright are maybe a little bit more dart throwy, and a little bit more lottery ticket-esque than maybe I would like, as we come back around here. And so because of that, and Samaje Perine is going to get cut, which hurts my 16-team dynasty league that I had earlier. But I think that opens the door for a little bit more Jaleel McLaughlin. Again, I think the 1B in a running back situation in Denver, but I think that still gets him quite a bit of value and quite a bit of volume. So I'm going to just kind of back up my backups a little bit and get Jaleel McLaughlin here in the 13th round. And so now it's going to come back around, and we need to get a defense and we need to get a kicker. So we are going to go with the New York Jets defense, and then it'll come back around to us and we will go with a kicker. So I think I like this team a little bit less than Team 8, but I'm happy we tried this strategy today, for reasons that I kind of broke down before, where I feel like we did move down a tier in quarterback here. I have one selection left. My boy Daniel Carlson. Let's rock and roll with him. But we moved down a tier in getting Love and Bowers. But because of that, we really solidify our wide receiver group with T. Higgins and Raheem Mostert. We then back up Raheem Mostert just in case by getting Jalen Wright a little bit later on, but that is a player that could absolutely hit. And we still get a couple of the, again, more lottery ticket, but guys who I think are really going to break out and could help us to a championship this year in Smith and Jigba and in Williams. And then we get, I think, some pretty good volume plays in Hubbard and McLaughlin. And so I think this is one of the more complete teams that we have drafted so far. I like this group. I still like Team 8 a little bit better though, but I think we did a great job here with this one. And I think this was a good exercise to see like what happens if we wait. We're relying a bit on Bowers to really break out. And to have a piece of an offense that was very conservative last year. But I do think we're going to be able to do that, or I do think he's going to be able to do that and have a pretty good year with the Raiders. All right, that's going to do it. Thank you all so much for tuning in. This was a blast today. We're going to do this again tomorrow. Coming up on the show tomorrow, that whole players who are going to decide fantasy, we're going to do that with players who I think are going to decide this NFL season. Rookies to watch in fantasy, and we're going to have another mock draft coming up, plus coaches who are on the hot seat. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you are, wherever you are consuming this, make sure you subscribe. If you're watching, make sure you like it. If you listen, make sure you review it. Follow me on social media at Primetime Klein, and I'll talk to all of you later. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Save on O'Reilly Brake Parts Cleaner. Get 2 cans of O'Reilly Brake Parts Cleaner for just $8. Valid in-store only at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Save on O'Reilly Brake Parts Cleaner. Get 2 cans of O'Reilly Brake Parts Cleaner for just $8. Valid in-store only at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.